Let's explore the developer visual. So the developer visual comes with a default text, and I said that the default text comes from this particular constructor. So here you have a text that has been printed out, which is update count, and the 0 basically comes from this particular method. So if you see, we have a method called update which gets called whenever some updation happens, and as and when you select a particular item over here, the count gets incremented. So here let me select employee ID, the count gets increased to 1, and if you select more fields, the count gets incremented automatically. So that is the default implementation that they have given here. And the first option in this one is the reload Visual Studio Code. So if you make any change, for example, let me change it to updated count and save this file. And if you come over here and if you click refresh, it will get updated to whatever changes you made within the code. And if you do not want manual updation, if you want it to automatically get updated, then you can select the second option. And now if you change anywhere in the code and if you just save it, even without manually updating, the visual gets updated. And the next option, which is the show data view, so just select that. If you select that, you will get a view something like this, and if you select this one, you will see a lot of different JSON like structure. And if you go into the table and if you go into the rows, you can see the different rows that we have selected for. For example, I have selected email, and each of the rows contains the email of the individual employees. So through this option, you can see the data that Power BI gives you to visualize. And the other options are nothing but exporting the data view, and the other one is help and feedback, which are not really important for us. So let me go back here and go back to the default view. So having explored the Power BI visual within the service, let's go to Visual Studio Code and understand the directory structure over here. One of the most important files is the pbiviz.json. So it contains various properties, and here you can change the name of the visual, your author details, and any of the assets that it uses, and any of the external JS code that it uses to build your visual, and some other details. And if you go to source, and this visual.ts file within the source that I was talking about earlier, this is the main file within which you will write all your code. So this entire code is written in a language called TypeScript. And for understanding this video tutorial, you really do not require any knowledge of TypeScript, and just a little knowledge of JavaScript is sufficient. So TypeScript is a superscript of JavaScript. So which means that if I compile this file, it gets transcompiled into JavaScript. So this code gets converted to JavaScript for the browser to understand. And if you see here, we have a class similar to what you would see in an object-oriented programming language. So it has a similar meaning, class, and it has some properties. It has a constructor. So constructor is the function that gets run when an instance of this class gets created, and you have a method called update. So this is the method that this is the code that gets run whenever you make any change within your visual. And you have another two methods, but these are not really important for us. When the TypeScript file gets compiled, it needs to know what are the different files it needs to take into consideration, and that information is provided within your tsconfig.json file. And here note that we have included source visual.ts file, so which is the main file for our custom visual, and it has also included the Power BI Visual API as well. To look at this API file, you can go to the same location, API version 13, and here Power BI Visual.d.ts. So this is the API file, and for most of the tutorial you really did not tamper with this particular file. And this .vs code file or this particular folder is where it stores the configuration information specific to Visual Studio Code. So if you are using any other code editor, you need not worry about this. And here you have the assets folder. So you can store various assets that you can use for your Power BI custom visual development. And finally you have a folder called style, and this is where you can use many of the CSS styles here. You also have node modules folder. So we will be installing various node modules, and those modules will be stored within this particular folder. So do not worry that there are too many files that you need to take care of. For most of your development purposes, you will be only handling with your visual.ts file where you will be writing all the code and a few other JSON files. And finally, before we go ahead and write code for developing our custom visual, we need to add a couple of libraries here. So just before I install those libraries, what I will do is I will use the Visual Studio integrated terminal over here. If you see here, our command prompt is already running, like it is already serving up the files. So you're basically blocked from entering any of the commands here. So what you can do is you can just stop this command prompt and go to your view and go into integrated terminal. So the integrated terminal opens with the default folder where your project is hosted, and you get many options to write the code either in PowerShell or in command prompt. So in this particular window, let me go and start the visual. Once the visual is started, what I can do is I can add another terminal over here. So if you see, the second one is the PowerShell, and this terminal is available for us to write commands to install the libraries. And if you go to the first terminal, you will note that the project is running. So I request you to set up this configuration because it allows you to work in only the same window and you need not shift back between your code editor and the command prompt. So let me go to the PowerShell window, and in the PowerShell window, let me install D3. So I will talk about D3 in just a while. So let me say npm install D3 at 3. So which will basically install the third version of D3. So D3, if you see, it stands for a data-driven documents, and it is a JavaScript library for you to manipulate documents based on the data you have. And D3 is a dynamic, interactive and online data visualization framework used in a very large number of websites, and we are going to use the D3 framework to build our custom visuals. So that is the first library that you need to install. So once you install that, just to verify if D3 is installed successfully, go to your node modules and just say refresh, and you will see a folder for D3 that is available. We have installed D3, but our PBI VIZ doesn't know that it needs to include that as a bundle when it compiles your project. So go to your PBI VIZ, and over here in external JS, just include the path to the D3 library. So here you need to include the path to the min.js file. So if you go to D3, and here you will see a file called d3.min.js, and you need to exactly include this particular file as an external file so that your PBI VIZ can bundle that. So I will say node underscore modules slash d3 slash d3.min.js. Once you install D3, you need to install the typings file for D3. That's basically because you have included an external JS file, but your TypeScript will complain that the types are not available for it to compile properly. So to do that, just go and install npm install at types /d3 at 3. So d3, the version is 3, so I need to say d3 at 3 and just say save. So if you are still confused, just remember that in order for your TypeScript to perform the type checking or to check the types within your D3 file, it needs the types to be defined somewhere, and that's where your typing file comes to the rescue, and that's why you need to install the typing file here. So to verify if this typing file has been installed successfully, you can go into package.json, and here you can see a entry for D3 and an entry for the typing file as well. And to see the list of files that have been installed as part of typing's file, you can again go to your node modules, and if you refresh that, you will see the files that are part of your typing's library. And to indicate to the typing's compiler that it needs to include this typing's file, you need to indicate that within the tsconfig.json file. So over here within the file section, you just need to create an entry for the typing's file, which is present within this node modules and within this types file, and within your D3 folder index.d.ts. And finally, you can go ahead and install the TypeScript file. Now the last thing that we need to install is the CSS framework. It's not really required, but it allows you to style your charts. So just go and say npm install bootstrap, and it will install the library for us. So it is saying that the jQuery is not installed. So let me first go and install jQuery before this bootstrap can be installed. And once the jQuery is installed, you need to also install a popper.js. So let me go and install that as well. And note that these installations you need to make on a per project basis. I think there is something wrong with the command, so I need to give a space. And once the popper.js is installed, I can go ahead and install bootstrap. So we have installed all the different libraries that are required for us to get started with the custom visual development. I have also shown you the different project files, the important project files and the folder structure of our project. And we have also explored a few of the tools within the Power BI service. In the next video, we will get started with the custom visual development. Thank you.